story time about how I exposed my abusive, toxic boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend is and has always been very charming. He has a ton of friends and everyone loves him. He's a very good looking guy and girls are always chasing him. I met him 2 years ago at a party. I had heard a bunch of stuff about him. I heard that he was a player and that he cheated on all of his girlfriends. So when he came up to me at the party, I was really cold. I basically told him I didn't want to talk to him and that I would never give him my number. And unfortunately, this made him try even harder. He could never take no for an answer. He spent an hour trying to convince me to go to have breakfast with him the next day. He was so charming and so good looking. Of course, I eventually said yes. Even a few of his guy friends at the party told me not to go. But of course, I ended up going with him to breakfast the next day. We hung out a few times and then he told me that he liked that I wasn't easy. He told me that I was different from other girls and he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes because I was starting to catch feelings. One night we went out with his friends and he started calling me stupid in front of them. Part two of how I exposed my abusive, toxic boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So we went out with his friends one night and he started calling me stupid in front of them. He had never done this before and I was really surprised. I thought maybe he was just doing it to impress his guy friends. That's when I asked him straight up in front of his friends why he kept calling me stupid. One of his friends steps up and says, "Yeah, why do you keep calling her stupid?" He stayed quiet for a second and didn't know what to say. Then he just laughed it off and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was doing that." That's when his friends started asking me questions about myself. I told him I was studying to be an engineer and that I had graduated with top honors. Well, let's just say they were all super impressed. We finally got into his car and he was driving me home. I was upset at him, so I decided not to give him a kiss goodnight. I started getting out of the car and he grabbed my wrist really hard. He pulled me back into the car and forcefully kissed me. He said that I embarrassed him in front of his friends, but that he'd give me a pass for it. I was actually in shock. A few weeks later, we were at the mall and he pulled my hair because he said I was looking at some guy. I tried to get up and leave and he wouldn't let me. Part three of how I exposed my abusive, toxic boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So at the mall, he pulled my hair back because he thought I was looking at a guy. Then I tried to get up from the table, but he wouldn't let me. That's when he said he was going to have to control me more from now on, because clearly I was trying to look for other guys. Then he dropped me off at my dorm room and insisted on coming up. I told him I didn't want him to and that we should reconsider the relationship. I told him he needed to cool off and reconsider how he treated me. That's when he started to cry instantly. He started apologizing and told me that I was right. Then he told me that he loved me. We hadn't used that word before. I didn't realize at the time that he was totally manipulating me. And unfortunately, I decided to give him another chance. A few days later, he asked me why I didn't tell him I loved him back. I told him I just wasn't sure. Then he started yelling at me, telling me that there were so many girls ready for him to be single, and that he had a girl text him every single night, but he would say no just because of me. So I told him I loved him. After that, he was a lot nicer, until one night he slapped me. Part four of how I exposed my abusive, toxic boyfriend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. One night he took me out to dinner and started asking me all these weird questions. He wanted to know about my last ex and why we broke up, and when I didn't give him enough information, he got really angry. When we got in his car, he slapped me and told me that I was a liar. After that, he just got worse. He would randomly just push me up against the wall if I annoyed him. He would constantly take my cell phone and start checking it. He even made me give him the password to my email. I decided that I was going to start recording all the abuse. I started recording all of our conversations and even set up a camera in my room. And of course, I had all this proof. One day I finally told him I didn't want to be with him anymore and he threatened me. I also told him that I was going to go to the police. Then he told me I would never be able to leave him and that no one would believe me because he never left bruises. That's when he started stalking me. He would also show up at my apartment and try to force his way in. He would grab me and try to kiss me and I would just push him away. So I finally went to the police. And I also went to the head of the school. I finally got a restraining order and the school expelled him. If you've experienced any of this, please get out of your relationship. Don't make my mistake.
Story time about how my dad was on the news and now everybody knows my last name. So a little background information. This all happened whenever I was in 6th grade. This all happened on a Tuesday night. So I had school the next day. Well, my dad had went to work earlier in the day. Well, around 10 o'clock at night, we hadn't heard from my dad all day, which was super weird for him because he was always home around 10 o'clock. And even if he wasn't, he still would have kept in contact with us and let us know where he was at. So at this point, my family and I were really scared and we're thinking that something happened to him. I was calling and texting him. My mom was calling and texting him. My whole family was pretty much trying to get a hold of him. Like, we had called all the hospitals to see if he was there. We called police stations to see if he might have been in jail or if they had his last name in the system. So nobody had heard or seen from him. So we all went to sleep that night hoping that he would show up in the morning. So the next day after I got home from school, my mom came home from work and she had told me about this phone call that she got. Like for part two. Part two of how my dad was on the news and now everybody knows my last name. So like I said, my mom had gotten home from work and she told me about this phone call that she got while she was at work. So apparently one of her coworkers called her and said, "Hey, I think I saw your husband on the news." So after that, she showed me the news article and I couldn't even believe what I was reading. So I guess my dad had been drinking and he went to an auto repair shop and stole a car because I guess the keys were left in the door of the car. And what makes this even worse, the car that he stole had 2 guns in the trunk. And they weren't 2 pistols, these were 2 big ass guns that were fucking loaded. Oh wait, I forgot something. So before this, he had been at the strip club and somehow he ended up in pink lingerie. Guys, I cannot make this shit up. So he was driving around and he decided to park right in the middle of an intersection and it was literally causing a whole fucking scene. There were people with their kids worried as hell. So after that, a few people called the cops, like for part 3. Part 2 about how my dad was on the news and now everybody knows my last name. So like I said, my dad parked in the middle of an intersection and people were calling the cops. So when the police arrived, my dad was half passed out in the car. This happened in like the middle of broad day, like there's traffic everywhere. So when they finally get up to the car, my dad is literally slumped in the driver's seat. There was a bottle of whiskey in the door and it was completely empty. When they went to arrest him, he started resisting. He was screaming a bunch of profanities at them and started kicking them, threatening them with guns, which made the situation worse because my dad had no clue that there were any guns in the back of the car. So that just made the police think that they were his. So they take my dad to jail and he has like 7 charges against him. But we were happy because we knew where he was. Well, the worst part is, so the next day when I went to school, people were coming up to me asking if that was my dad on the news. Some people were even making fun of me because of what he did. And that's really fucking embarrassing for a 12-year-old. But it's okay, Dad, I still love you.
My stepsister impersonated me and canceled my wedding venue reservation. She's 18 and a jealous cow. I got the reservation for a steal because I booked early, and global situation made things uncertain. Well, now demand for wedding venues has skyrocketed. The venue is now asking nearly triple the original cost for the same date. They said they'll only honor the original reservation if I show proof that my stepsister committed fraud, identity theft, in the form of a police report. My father has begged me not to involve the police, so I told him he'll need to cover the new cost then. All of it except my original deposit, because I'm aggravated. He's going to be selling some property to do this. He has put down the additional deposit for the venue already though. I know he was not to blame, but he houses that witch, and by asking me not to report her fraud, I can only assume he takes responsibility for her actions. Am I the idiot? I do feel guilty because my fiance and I are much more financially well off than my father, but I just feel like this is not my problem to fix. He did find an alternative venue that was pretty nice and wasn't as expensive, but I said it had to be the original venue. I'm just incredibly annoyed. I feel I'm the idiot because my dad is being punished for the wrongdoing of someone else. I'm also putting him through some financial hardship by demanding he rebooks the same venue, even though there are cheaper alternatives. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. If he doesn't let you do the thing that would get you your original rate, then he can pay the difference. Institute some kind of password system with all your vendors though, because she will try this again. And call all the vendors you're using for the wedding to double check she hasn't canceled anything else, pretending to be you. Imagine what she'll do to the wedding dress given the opportunity, either before or at the wedding. Hopefully she's not on the guest list. Not the idiot. This is a fair solution. However, I would go to the police instead of having your father pay. Your stepsister is an adult, and she needs to take responsibility for her actions. She will continue to do stuff like this if your father is always there to bail her out. She clearly needs to learn a lesson. The father shouldn't have to go financially in the hole for this witch stepdaughter. He's offered to pay, so his wife presumably can't blame him for not trying to do something. But OP makes their own decisions. If it were me, I wouldn't want to see my dad pay all that money because it's money down a rat hole. Stepdaughter will keep pulling this crap until someone makes her face consequences. I would file a police report. You have no way of knowing when your father will be able to sell property to come up with the funds. Get the venue secured ASAP before it gets taken. File the police report immediately. That way, number 1, you can provide the requisite information to get the same rates and wedding date. Number 2, show your stepsister you mean business and deter similar future behavior. Number 3, give stepsister an introduction to the real world and consequences. Not the idiot. But your father shouldn't pay for it, or at least get the money back from your sister. What she did is outrageous, to say the least. Your father paying now, and even having to sell some property, is somewhat enabling your sister. What got into her? Some weird family dynamics are going on. Still, I hope you'll have a lovely wedding after all, but make sure your sister pays up, and don't invite her. I can't imagine anyone so toxic that they would do such a thing. Me, female 30, and my husband 35, have been married for 5 years. We have 2 little children. He's a doctor and I have an office job. Here's the thing. We both used to handle chores equally. Well, not exactly, but we had no problem until our baby was born. I expected my husband as a parent to help more, and since now we have 2 kids, but he constantly got busy with work, understandable, and had me do 75% of childcare and chores. He explained the pressure he was put under in 2020 until now, and said he expected me to understand that his work is super stressful. Fine, but is that an excuse to forget about his duty as a father? We had this conversation many times. I didn't want to pressure him, so I gave him a chance to get his time in order. And last night he came home at 9 p.m. I was dealing with our baby crying, not wanting to sleep, while my husband was resting from being on his feet all day. He was rushing me to put dinner on the table while trying to get our son to sleep. He said he was starving when I asked him to wait. Then I asked him if he could stay with our son till I got dinner ready, but he said he was exhausted and had zero energy to do it. I walked up to him and brought up the work imbalance when it came to home duties and told him he was acting like I was a stay-at-home mom and this needs to stop. I reminded him that I too work and I'm equally exhausted. He said, let's be real. My job isn't all that exhausting since I'm sitting on my desk from 9 to 5 while he works nonstop day and night. He said his job is too different than mine and way more stressful, so I shouldn't call them equal since I have no idea what it's like to do his job. He leaned back on the couch and told me to get a clue. I literally snapped and told him I got fed up with being considerate of his struggle when all I got was nothing in return. And from now on, he needs to do equal chores and childcare, and he can start by preparing his own dinner. Then I went upstairs. He said he was hurt by how I talked to him and made him seem like an awful father, but it's out of his control. He's overwhelmed with work and can't be doing more than he's capable of because he's human. I think I was way too mean, and I get it. It's not like he's ignoring his parental duties to spend time on Facebook and Instagram. No, he just works so much, and I appreciate his efforts to provide for our family. But the way he underestimated my work was not cool. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. He made a choice to take on the responsibilities of a husband and a father. He needs to figure his stuff out. If he's working so many hours, perhaps he needs to cut back. You are working full-time caring for children and doing 75% of the chores. Precisely what are you getting out of this relationship? Your hubby has enough energy to make children and needs to find the energy to take care of them. I agree he needs to step up. Believe me, I really understand what OP is going through here, and it stinks. However, many doctors can't just decide to work fewer hours per week. Unless you own your own practice, I don't think that's a legit option. I'm not the idiot. There will be heaps of people who decide that because your husband is a doctor, he's automatically more exhausted. But that's not true when you look at the fact that you work full-time and do the vast majority of domestic labor and childcare. I've run the numbers, which adds up to you working just as many, if not more hours. Your husband is no doubt tired, but to be so dismissive of your situation makes him the one that needs to get a clue. Everyone's the idiot here. Is his income enough to support the whole house? It really sounds like one of you probably should be staying at home parenting. Otherwise, hiring a live-in maid or nanny might be your best option. Bills and house should be split 50-50. If you both work too much, you either need outside help or one of you needs to cut back on the work to handle the work at home. Why doesn't he give up his career and stay home if his job is so stressful? Do not quit your job. This man will hold it over your head that he's the breadwinner. You know, divorcing him and splitting custody would force him to step up and parent his own kids. I agree. Suggesting that women dealing with rocky family situations give up their source of independence is not great advice. What if something happens to him? What if his behavior is even worse than what we're seeing here, and she wants to get a divorce? If she quits her job for any period, she'll end up with a hole in her employment history and not have a job to provide her the financial security to leave. I was at my friend's house for a small get-together. The host, Tom, fake name, says, let's all order fried chicken, and we ended up getting Popeyes off Uber Eats. The food ends up coming really early. Normally it takes around 1.5 hours. One of our friends hadn't even shown up yet, so we decided to just wait a bit to eat. Tom's girlfriend, Megan, said she's going to have some now. After about an hour, when I go grab some food, I grab a sandwich. This is untouched, and then grab some of the fried chicken, and well, all the skin has been pulled off it. I am like, what? I go back into the living room, and I was like, hey, did the food come like this? And then Megan is like, oh no, I just ate the skins. It's my favorite part. I was like, what? My other friends were like, what too? But didn't want to be confrontational. I was like, okay, whatever, my sandwich is just fine. I'll eat that, and we had some potato chips too. Later, my friend Tom requests me on Cash App for the Popeyes. I'm like, I'll only pay you for the sandwich. He then goes, come on, the fried chicken was just fine. I'm like, no, get it from Megan. Now Tom is angry at me for not paying. This is just messed up. Then he wants me to feel bad for Megan because she has an eating disorder and can't help herself from time to time. To me, she is 25. Like, grow up. What annoyed me the most was he was acting like Megan was doing a favor by saying she ate the skin. That's the unhealthy part. Some of my other friends hadn't paid Tom at all, since they didn't even order a sandwich and didn't eat anything. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. She essentially took some of everyone else's food. Maybe someone else thinks the skin is their favorite part. Why does she get to just take it all? Why did she touch everyone's food? Ew, is she freaking Cartman from South Park? Not the idiot. It is super gross for someone to use their fingers to grab at everyone's food. Eating disorders don't make you into an idiot. And that's a big nasty move, eating the skin off everyone's chicken? Imagine what would happen if she worked in a restaurant herself. It's not okay if I get a taste of each of the customers' orders before I give it to them, but it's my favorite. No, Megan, just no. Not the idiot. I'll admit to having ordered fried chicken and not eating any of the actual chicken before, but it was my order. Megan knows darn well the rest of you wanted your fair share of the crispy stuff, or you just have ordered rotisserie from somewhere else. And if she's struggling with impulse control, this incident should be a sign to her that she needs to be working on that with the pro, not an excuse for being inconsiderate. Tom needs to accept that she basically stole the meals you'd intended to eat and eat the cost. If Tom wants to be reimbursed, then he can ask his girlfriend to pay him back. She touched and spread her filthy germs, especially in this social climate with the whole pandemic. What a nasty Nash. Plus, the skin is like the best part to a lot of people. So this is going to be extremely weird. I met my husband in college, as we were part of a tight-knit friend circle of 4 people. We are friends to this day. So due to personal reasons that I won't dive into, my husband asked me to marry. It was supposed to be just a paper marriage and nothing emotional, which we had decided to end after some years. It was perfect for me because we are all from a South Asian country where women are expected to get married at a young age, and I had pressure from my family. So I did it and got to work on my career as I've always wanted. We were supposed to get a divorce after 3 years, and only our friends knew the truth about our marriage. After only a year, my husband's sister and her husband died in an accident, and their 2 minor children had no one besides us. My husband does have a brother, but we were clearly a good option for the children, and we genuinely wanted to take care of them. I just fell in love with the children and being a mother to them. They were so young when we had them, so we just couldn't go through with the divorce because it would have been traumatizing for the kids who were just starting to adjust. Plus, I did really have a great relationship with my husband, and I think we got comfortable with the idea of what we had as a family, so we just kind of stuck with that. It's been 7 years now, and we never consummated our marriage and have no romantic relationship, and we don't intend to have one. His mom found out about that through our friend's parents, who apparently knew, and she is hugely disappointed in us. She wants him to have a real marriage and have actual kids of his own. If we are not willing to do that, we need to end this marriage and find our true partners. After us rejecting that and telling her, she went insane and told everyone in our family, and we're getting a lot of heat from the people. So, am I the idiot? Not the idiot. It's none of their business. You have a beautiful family, and you and your husband have respect, admiration, and genuine affection for one another by your account. Honestly, what you two have is a lot more than other married couples who have consummated their marriage. A tremendous amount more. Paper doesn't make a marriage. You both have supported each other through times most of us would collapse through, sometimes less tough times. You have a relationship. Don't name it, it's just what you have. And now the only name it needs is it's a family. Screw the words. Your actions are what matter, and they make you amazing people. Forget societal norms. They would be, in this case, what rips apart a good family. Do you want that? Not the idiot, but how did anyone find out what goes on in your bedroom? This is so beyond inappropriate. I understand our cultures are different, but I'm offended that your mother-in-law thinks she gets to dictate what intimate relationship you have with your husband. Either tell her it's none of her business, or if it is her business in your culture, agree to her request, then continue to live your life as you do. Not everyone gets pregnant. Unless there's a camera in your bedroom, keep your secret and live your life your way. I hope you find a way of doing this, and I wish you the best of luck. I would have little scruples in your situation and just lie, saying your mother-in-law is making things up and you and your husband are just not able to have children. But you and your husband need to be able to figure out what's best. My mom passed away 7 months ago, and since she died, her family hasn't stopped contacting me. I, 23 male, never had contact with them before or with her. The reason is, I was an affair baby and they never got over it. My dad cheated on my mom, got my biological mom pregnant. My mom found out about it but agreed to work things out with my dad. My bio mom didn't make it giving birth, and she's been the only mom I've ever had, and she was great. My parents didn't stay together though. I think I was 2 or 3 when they split up, and my mom mostly had custody because my dad traveled a lot for work, so he was only around when he could be. Her family never liked me for this, and they feel like I robbed my mom of having a real baby, not one she was tricked into raising. My mom never liked how none of them wanted to treat me like family, so she went no contact with them when I was really little. A few times she did try to get me to know them, but they were always nasty, especially her mom, so she stopped trying after that. We haven't had contact with anyone in her family for years. I'm the only one who got any inheritance from my mom after she died, nobody else in her family. So that's what they're all mad about. Before my mom went no contact with them, she was helping her siblings out with the medical bills for their mom, and now they've been struggling for years. They think it's fair since the only reason she cut contact with them was because of me, and it's not their fault they couldn't accept me as family, and I shouldn't hold it over them as she did. I see their point in this. Yeah, they didn't see me like family. They saw me as an affair baby and reminder of my dad messing up their marriage and her life. It made my mom cut them off, even though they were a great family before that. But after how they treated me, I don't know. Does it make me an idiot that I don't want to split it? I know they've got their own problems that maybe my mom could have helped with, so that's why I don't know. Not the idiot. They only want access to the money. Once the money stops, they'll either start trashing you again or just go no contact with you. If your mother never made any provisions in her will for them, there was a reason for that. The money is yours to do as you wish, and I would stay away from these leeches. Not the idiot. Punishing a child over something they had no control or say in is horrible. Nothing is excusable about that, and it sounds like they mostly cared about what she did for them and not the other way around. It still doesn't sound like they care about you or want a real relationship, just what you got that they didn't. I'm willing to bet you're the only one who got anything because your mother understood this. Also, I'm sorry for your loss. The adults in your family who couldn't or don't handle their business is not your responsibility. Your mother made a choice, and it's apparent she didn't regret it or you. She wanted to ensure you'd be taken care of. I'm a bit older, and it's unfortunate, but family comes out of nowhere when there's death and money involved. It's awful, but true. Go with your gut instinct and trust that. Sounds like your sweet, generous mom did. I am so sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry you're having to deal with her family being such entitled idiots after losing a parent. Not the idiot. Like you said, they weren't interested in a relationship with you and treated you poorly. Your mother left you the inheritance, not them. They aren't entitled to anything. Block their numbers and on social media. If they don't stop, you could contact a lawyer about a cease and desist.
Storytime about how I slept with my teacher and got pregnant. A little background information, I was 18 and in 12th grade. I had always had trouble in school, especially history class. And I had always had tutors and everything like that. And eventually I just got tired of trying to get my grade up because I realized that it was never going to happen. So my teacher was 27 years old. We're going to call him Mike. And Mike had a girlfriend. He had been staying after school helping me like every single day. From like 3 o'clock till 5 o'clock. Well, the one day I had this outfit on that maybe wasn't that appropriate, and I was being super flirty with him the whole time. To be honest, I just didn't want to put in the effort to get up my grades. And then 10 minutes later, he started getting handsy, and I told him that if he wanted to do anything, he had to get my grade up for me. So he did just that. Well, for the next couple of months, I would go over to his house to study So like I said, I got tired of putting effort in to get my grade up, so I let him hit, and then I was going over his house after school. Well, later on at the end of the year, I find out that I'm pregnant. And because I was 18, I really didn't have to care about what my parents thought. So I told him, and surprisingly, this man was on board with it. He was like, oh my god, like, let's do this. I'm so happy. And I was like, what the fuck? Well, his ex-girlfriend found out, so she went and told the school. He got fired. And 3 years later, we're still together raising our child.
My 25 female father married my stepsister's 23 female mother when I was 4 and she was 3. We've lived together for most of our lives and are a family. She and I were extremely close. She developed cancer when she was 14 and was sick for about 2 years. She's since made a full recovery. During that time, my parents became understandably overprotective. They also asked a lot of me. I quit my extracurriculars so I could get a job. The money went towards her medical bills, and so I could drive her to appointments. I didn't go to dances, and any fun activities I did needed to include her. I did almost all of this willingly, the exception being having to quit my high school volleyball team. I did throw a bit of a tantrum about that, but was swiftly punished. And I think having one emotional breakdown was pretty chill given the circumstances. Anyhow, I go to college and meet my ex, we'll call him Ben, when I'm a junior. We fall in love, blah blah blah. He and I move in together when we graduate, so we've been living together for about 3 years. We were serious, until July when I walked into my bedroom and saw him doing it with my sister. I broke it off, tears were shed, he moved out, etc. My sister apologized at first, but then backed off. I thought she was giving me space, but last week she called and asked if we could meet up. She told me that she and Ben were in love and were just telling me as a courtesy before they started posting photos online. Distraught, I left her in the restaurant by herself and did not pay my portion of the bill. She later Venmo'd me asking for the money. She told my parents, who then called me to their house, telling me how disappointed in me they are for not supporting my sister's relationship with Ben. They brought up the fact that she had cancer as a teenager, she never learned proper social etiquette, and has a hard time meeting people. I don't buy this, in part because I've seen her socialize just fine, and since we spent a good chunk of the time she was sick together, that would also mean that I should have bad social skills as well, by that logic. They then told me that if I don't accept my sister and Ben's relationship, they may have to go no contact with me. I reminded them that I'm also their daughter and they should understand my point of view, but they are adamant that this is about me being jealous of her. I'm not jealous of her. I'm not upset that Ben picked her over me. I'm sad about the end of the relationship and do feel betrayed, but Lord knows that I don't want to be with a cheater. What I'm upset about is the fact that my sister chose Ben over me. That she slept with Ben knowing he and I were in a long-term, committed relationship, and continues to be with him knowing how much it hurts me. Now no one in my immediate family is talking to me, and I'm getting messages from aunts and uncles and cousins telling me that I'm an a-hole and a selfish witch.
Am I the butthole for snapping when I found out that a guy saw my girlfriend naked? I'm a 25-year-old guy, and my 23-year-old girlfriend, Lydia, lives with a roommate who has a boyfriend, Jeff. We gathered at their place last Friday for pizza. After a while, Jeff asked Lydia if she's still scared of being alone the nights when my roommate goes over to his place and when I can't come over. Lydia has always had trouble with being alone at night, and most nights I stay on FaceTime with her until she falls asleep so she feels safer. The roommate laughed and said that if she hears a noise in the bathroom, at least it'll be a ghost and not her locked in passed out. Lydia quickly said to me that she would explain later. When we got to Lydia's room, I asked her to explain, and she told me that this afternoon she wasn't feeling well, and she ended up fainting in the shower. So Jeff had to break down the door so her roommate could get in and help her. She said that she already felt better, and she didn't want to tell me because I was going to be worried about nothing. I said it wasn't nothing if she'd fainted, and that I should be aware of these things to help her. She said that now it would just be a funny story of how Jeff broke the door and her roommate had to cover her with a towel so they could come to the rescue of her naked body. That moment, I saw red. I asked if Jeff had seen her naked, and she said that she couldn't be sure since she was unconscious, but the roommate said that Jeff stood outside of the bathroom until she was fully covered. I asked if Lydia thought that it was fair for me to not know that another guy had seen her naked, and she said that he didn't actually see her naked, and that it shouldn't matter since he was only helping. I shouted that she just said that she was unconscious, so she couldn't know if he saw her or not. She told me to be quiet or they would hear me, and I shouted that I didn't care, that a man just saw my girlfriend's body and I had a right to be mad. Jeff and his girlfriend came in and they explained that he never saw anything. He just broke the lock and waited outside until the roommate gave him an all clear. I said that I didn't believe him, and the roommate jumped to his defense, saying that she was right there making sure the situation wasn't embarrassing so they could take proper care of Lydia without her feeling weird. I said that if she was a cuckold, I wouldn't be. What? Jeff then shouted at me, saying that I should respect his girlfriend as well as my girlfriend, who had spent a whole day saying that she was fine, but still looked a bit pale. He said that he only did it because he cared about Lydia and that I was a butthole who didn't deserve any type of help. Hearing him say that he cared about her was it for me. I left without so much as looking at Lydia as she begged me not to go. Over the weekend, Lydia had to be admitted to a hospital because she wasn't feeling well again, and Jeff and the roommate prohibited me from seeing her, saying that I didn't deserve her. Obviously, the whole hospital thing sucks, and I wish that I was there for her, but still, I think that I was right. At this point, I'm not mad at Lydia anymore, just at Jeff.
I, 36 female, have dated Nick, 37 male, for 3 years. I wasn't perfect, but my perception is that we have had an overall positive relationship. Until a year ago when I caught him cheating. I'm financially independent and have been a careful planner in terms of my finances. I'll be completely debt-free on January 2022. I had a hard time forgiving him, but he did everything to regain my trust and we had a somewhat smooth run for about 8 months. He asked me to help him start a business, which I did in part. I wrote the plan according to his idea, coached him getting through his permits and all other steps. He didn't follow through. First it was that he didn't have time, then it was that he was anxious because getting it off the ground wouldn't be immediate. So in other words, I created a business for him where I would be his main client. This sounded like a happy medium since he wanted me to appoint him as my partner and that's unthinkable. For background, I went to college and while being an average student, I did work hard later on when I found my first job to make up for not having an excellent academic record. I earned certificates and invested in my education however I could to improve my chances. It paid off. I've been self-employed since I was 28. When I met Nick, he told me he owned a small agency but was about to get a government job since the economy wasn't helping. I was perfectly okay with that. Things were going well, until I found out that he was seeing his ex. This was a huge blow for me because I didn't know what I did for him to do this. I did everything in my power to be supportive and to be a reliable partner. I did my best to look nice for him, and I was contributing to the household. I paid half of everything, and it was my place. We had a long crisis until I chose to forgive and let go. During this new honeymoon phase, he got a better job, treated me with love, and was very attentive to my feelings. I began to see red flags early this past October. He suddenly wanted me to be hands-off from his startup, didn't want to go out, and lost interest in being intimate. He became grouchy and rude. It was all about him and his needs. He'd lost his job last year due to COVID. We moved to a house I leased in January. I love the house, but it created friction between us. I'm an animal lover. My landlord doesn't interfere with my pet-related activities as long as I can keep the place clean. I built a catio for my 10+ cats that I've rescued. It's an indoor space with controlled temperature and all their supplies are available to them 24/7. This was my dream. I wanted to help those kitties stay off the street since I've been feeding them for years. Also, they have all their shots. One of them had CKD but bounced back. Nick knew this from the start. The house is clean, no pet smells thanks to the automatic cat litter boxes. He resented the cats because he wanted his family to move in. The answer was no. We never discussed this. He went as far as to ask me to get rid of the cats and suggested I put them up for adoption. The cats were not his expense. He hasn't worked a steady job in months while I've helped him fund his business meetings because I didn't want to kill his dream. He does contribute, but significantly less. I cannot live with his family. They are choosing beggars and moochers. The pattern is that his siblings and himself break off their relationships as soon as babies are born, but I realized this too late. Nick says his ex went crazy after she gave birth. His brother tricked his ex into moving with her parents while he found a home for them and the baby. He never found a house, but knocked her up a second time so her parents banned him from stepping into their home. The youngest brother hightailed his wife when she had her second baby. All his siblings and his mom lived together. His reason for wanting them to move in was that we had 3 spare bedrooms plus a very large family room and that it would be great if they saved on rent. So, I guess there was no intention to contribute. Long story short, I got really sick by the end of October. I never got so much as a kind gesture from him. I cried due to body aches and he just stayed away. His excuse is that I could be contagious, it wasn't COVID. He never asked me if he could get me anything to eat and hardly ever came to check on me. I spent a lonely Thanksgiving while still recovering because he left to be with his family. My loved ones aren't near because I left everything for him. At some point, we talked about marriage. I recently found out he is back with his side chick. I was gonna hire a PI, but it's not worth it. I already know what I need to know. I got a hold of his phone and found about 3 weeks worth of texts. They are definitely hooking up. I've held this inside of me because at first, I was in too much pain to confront him. I don't wish it on anybody. We are hardly on speaking terms and he hasn't even bothered to ask me what's wrong. I didn't find anything on his girlfriend's social media, Laura. I did find more than I needed to know from her mother's profile. He has been active in their lives since at least last summer and has been lying to me. This hits close to home. While he's been lying to me about going to job interviews without any luck, I've been partially financing his lifestyle. He has a so-called business trip to the British Virgin Islands. I no longer think there's business involved. Or, he may be combining business with something else. I don't know if this is a fake business conference or what, and I don't want to know. I did see Laura's mother's social media, and she vaguely mentions a trip abroad. I'm leaving him, first because of the pain he's causing me, and second because he's a liar. I need advice to see if there's anything I'm leaving out from my to-do list, as I'll be disconnecting from him. I'm not granting him the luxury of knowing that I'm pulling the rug in advance. I already talked to the landlord, as I'll be leaving the house slightly earlier. I'll be using next trip to uproot myself. I already hired a company that specializes in pet transport, since I'm concerned about flying pets in cargo. I have all their health certificates in order, so they'll be coming to pick my kittens up by 9 AM. Nick's flight leaves much earlier, so he needs to be out by 6 AM. I'm moving closer to my family, and I've already made arrangements to board my pets until a new catio is built for them. My sister will take care of it, and I'll be living on my own property. I've arranged for the movers to come the same day in the afternoon. That way I'll have time to pack and separate my stuff from his. I'll have all his personal items shipped to his mother's house because I don't want any personal interaction. All business efforts have been cancelled. I've made sure he gets no access to my clients and deleted the business plan, etc. I need to change all my passwords and all the pins on all my cards and the visa I've allowed him to use for emergencies because he might be able to draw from it. I also need to drain the bank account I let him use for business expenses and close it. I think it's best if I do it while he's flying to keep him from using them. I don't know if I'm leaving anything out. I will leave immediately to avoid any surprises, his family coming to confront me, etc. He can now move in with his girlfriend if he wants. I think she lives with her parents, but he will no longer be my problem. Any suggestions? I'd hate to leave any loose ends.
Very cute guy, 30, who works at City Recycling Center, used address from Amazon box to return my grandmother's ring. I want to ask him to coffee. Sister says this is how, quote, dumb girls disappear. There's a lot of backstory here, but I have a ring that was my grandmother's engagement ring from her high school sweetheart who was killed in Korea before they got married. She says I was the only person she ever told this story to out of respect for my grandpa, but she still treasured the ring and the boyfriend's memory, and she wanted me to have it. About a month ago, I just lost the ring. As in, it was on my bathroom counter 1 minute, and the next, it was gone. I tore my house apart with no sign and was super depressed and figured it must have gone down the sink or I vacuumed it or something. Well, this past weekend, I get a knock on my door, which literally never happens anymore. The guy was very nervous and very nice and really cute too. And he asked if I was Alyssa X, and I said yes. He said he really didn't know how appropriate this was, but he was a supervising civil engineer at our city recycling center. And about a month ago, one of the sorters found a ring in an Amazon box and gave him the box and the ring. He said he tried to contact me via phone and social media for a couple of weeks. I deleted all of it due to a bad breakup. Thought about mailing the ring, but didn't want it to get lost. So after thinking on it for a week, he decided to hand deliver it to the address on the box and hope it worked. I immediately busted into tears when I saw the ring and I only got his first name. I think I told him thank you, and I think he said that it made him very happy, his plan worked, and he would let me have my moment and left. I cried for a good hour, just staring at the ring, amazed at how lucky I was. I started to feel bad. I blew the guy off, so I did some social media sleuthing and found his Instagram. I created a new account and sent him a message thanking him. He has not responded, so I don't think he's very active. I found out where he works, and I want to surprise him and ask him to dinner or coffee or drinks as a way of saying thank you. Yes, in my heart I'm thinking this is how great romance stories start, but my brain really is thankful he went through all the trouble. When I told my sister about my plan, she absolutely said I was being an idiot. She said it was nice the guy returned the ring, but his behavior is so sus. She said I have no idea who this guy is. All we know is that he, quote, stalked my address from an Amazon box, which is probably massively against the rules of his job. She says instead of being a great romance, it's how dumb girls end up dead in a ditch. What do you guys think about this?
When I say this woman literally tried to steal my suitcase at the airport, like we had to get airport security on her. So yesterday at 4:30 in the morning, I had to go to the airport because we were flying to Vegas, me and my boyfriend. And this is me and my boyfriend's first time ever traveling like alone together. Like no parents, no help. It was a little nerve-wracking. So we got to the airport way earlier than we had to. We got to the airport at 5 a.m. and our flight wasn't till 10. But our plan was to just like get there super early, sit down, have food, get Starbucks, and just like not be stressed. Well, we walk into the airport and we go to like drop our bags. If you've never been to an airport, that's basically where you give like the people your suitcase so that they can put it on the plane. So I go to do that and they're like, oh, we're so sorry, but it's too early for you to put your suitcase in the drop bag area. And I was like, what? I didn't even know that was a thing because I've gone to the airport a lot, gotten there really early before, and they've never told me that I couldn't put my suitcase in the area. So I'm like, okay, fine. So we had to sit in like this couch area in the front of the airport, and we had our suitcases, backpacks, like all of our luggage. So we're sitting there on this couch thing, and once again, it's really early. We had gotten no sleep, so we start to fall asleep. I regret this so much. So I start to close my eyes. They were like squinted so I could still see a little bit. In the back of my mind, I'm like, stay awake, somebody's gonna steal your suitcase, which did happen. So I'm sitting there with my eyes squinted when all of a sudden I see a lady come up and grab my suitcase. I open my eyes and I like tap my boyfriend on the shoulder because I didn't know what to do. Like I'm not good at confronting people. And my boyfriend kind of just looks at me and looks at her, and the lady just starts walking off with my suitcase. So I'm like, what? So I told my boyfriend, I'm like, go up there and stop her. He's like, okay. So he goes up to her, he stops her, and he's like, that's my suitcase. And she's like, no, it's not. We didn't really understand what she was saying because I don't think she spoke English. So all she was saying was, no. And I'm like, what is going on? Because she didn't speak English. We don't speak any other language. All she could say was no, and she'd say something in a different language. It was so confused. So I go up there and I'm like, lady, like, this is my suitcase. And she's like, no, screaming at this point. So then security comes over and they're like, what's going on? And the lady just looks at the security guard and goes, no. And I'm like, oh my God. My boyfriend starts talking to the security guard. He's like, this lady just came up and took my girlfriend's suitcase. Like, it's hers. He's like, okay. Then he talks to the other lady, and once again, all she's yelling is no. So he obviously is like, okay, this is not her suitcase. He gives us back my suitcase, and then they take her to like some random place in the airport. I don't know. I didn't see her after the security guard like grabbed her. I've never had an experience like that. And I'm just so happy that my eyes were open because I wouldn't have seen her grab my suitcase, and then I wouldn't have my suitcase and all of my stuff was in all of my clothes, my entire wardrobe. So yeah, don't fall asleep at the airport. Don't get to the airport too early, otherwise you're gonna be stuck there and somebody will try to steal your suitcase. But I made it to Vegas. Here's my suitcase right here.
Am I the butthole for telling my parents that I make more money than both of my siblings when they told me to get a real job? I'm a nanny to 2 special needs kids. There's a very high demand for nannies for special needs kids because 3 special needs daycares in my county shut down. So I make approximately $120,000 a year. And I live in the family's guest house rent-free, and they bought me a car so I can drive the kids around. My parents have the belief that any job in childcare is not a real job. They even went so far as to call my aunt, who majored in child development, and had her tell me how broke she is when I said I wanted to major in early childhood education. Then they told me that I could either pick an acceptable major or they wouldn't pay for my college. I cut contact with them for a while in college, and we recently started talking again. I have been in contact with my siblings, though. My parents recently asked about my job in education, and they were not happy when I said that I'm a nanny and I have my master's in special education. They made a comment that I'm working the same job that I've had since I was 15 and how I'll be broke forever. Then they told me to get a real job like my brother, who's an accountant, or my sister, who's a nurse. I was pissed and told my parents that I make more money than both my brother and sister, and I don't have to pay rent, car payments, or gas. They hung up, and I got a text from my sister saying that I made her look bad to our parents. My brother said that I should have just kept my mouth shut. Am I the butthole for telling my parents how much I make? Am I the butthole for being ungrateful of the cake that my boyfriend made me? I'm a 33-year-old woman, and I've been dating Alex, a 34-year-old guy, for almost 3 years. Alex has a 13-year-old daughter from a previous marriage that he has full custody of. When we met, Alex was doing very well. He made 6 figures, and he had a decent house in a fine neighborhood. I had a slightly lower paying job. Almost a year and a half ago, his job had to cut some employees, and he was one of them. He had to take on a job, and he's earning much less than he did before. I moved into their house 5 months ago. Ever since I moved in, I've helped a lot with bills, usually paying half or even more of them. Yesterday was my birthday. I wanted to celebrate at a nice restaurant near us. However, it was closed. There was another one a little closer to us, but it was more expensive. I suggested going there for my birthday, but Alex said that he couldn't afford to pay for dinner there, and if we went, we would have to split the bill. I was a little upset, but he said that he would make something himself. The cake I wanted was, admittedly, somewhat expensive. I pointed the cake out to him, and he said again that he didn't think that he could afford it with Christmas coming up, and we'd have to go half. I told him that I was not paying for a cake for my own birthday, and he said that he would see what he could do. Well, yesterday came. We made dinner, and it was quite good, better than most meals we eat, although not as good as what it would be at a restaurant. However, when he brought the cake out, it was just something that he made himself. He said he was sorry that he couldn't afford the nicer cake, but he had made this one and his daughter had helped. I pretended to enjoy it, but after I told him that I was hoping for a slightly nicer cake. He said that he had tried his best, and he couldn't spend the money that he had set aside for bills on a cake. I guess his daughter heard, because now he's also saying that I made her upset after she helped make it. He keeps saying that I should apologize to her and say that I really liked it. Am I the butthole?